So today we're going to start the process of fixing up the Zetter 7711. Now, as most of you guys know, somewhat recently I made a couple videos about this, one where I got it and I'm all happy and optimistic, and you know, we go through, we give it a bunch of new hydraulic hoses, we change all the fluids in this thing, get it running nice, get it sounding good, go through, rewire everything that needs to be rewired, and life was good. Then there's the second video I made, which is where I took it out for the very first time and the engine self-destructs. So no one really knows what's going on. It will run and drive and start and everything. The problem is that you can hear one of the rods going as it's running. So we don't want to run it unless we absolutely have to. So the question is, A, what happened, and B, what am I going to do about it? And what seems to have happened, according to the best guess from my mechanic buddy Steve, without actually seeing the inside of the engine, he thinks it's a rod bearing, possibly a wrist pin. It looks like it's not getting oil. We're not really sure why. I just changed the oil, and yes, I did manage to get the oil filter put back together properly. I mean, it really only goes together one way, and I made sure to test it before we closed it up. He thinks there's a good chance that the oil pump just happened to decide to die right then and there. It's got oil in it. It's the right type of oil. It should be getting oil, but evidently it isn't. So basically, I'm pretty much stuck with this thing right now. You know, I paid about $6 grand for the machine. I'm into it probably about $9, valuing parts and time that we sunk into it. And as it sits, it's worth like maybe $2. And at that price point, it would still be almost impossible to sell the stupid thing. I mean, right now the loader that's on it is worth more than the tractor. You know, someone was asking us like, oh, you should take this back to wherever you got it from. And I'm not really gonna do that because A, I don't think I could if I wanted to. B, it seems like this isn't like if you buy a car with a lot of miles and an automatic transmission and they're like, oh, it's fine, and then, you know, you own it for a week and the automatic transmission dies and it's full of all that goop you can buy at the auto parts store. So what we need to do is get the loader off, because this loader, it's an aftermarket loader and it goes right underneath the oil pan, so we can't open up the engine while this is on here. So let's just see if we can get this moved into the shop. This is gonna be not fun. Hopefully if I just unhook this, it'll pop off the chain from his bucket, and I think it did. And that's what it looked like. I don't know how much of this oil we're gonna catch. There shouldn't be much in here. Ah! Famous last words. All right. Well, we're still losing less than last time. Look at that, it's actually somewhat like oil. It's light colored. And I hope that dead bug in there is out of the bucket, not out of the hose.
I totally don't want to be screwing with this loader again. Keep her going. So close. Oh, that one's coming out everywhere. Ah!
I think it's good. I think if we just give it a tug, it'll pull it off its rear brackets to stand back. Woo! We could have done that more gracefully, but with broken mounts on this thing, and just not being 100% factory installed or whatever, I like it. I do. Alright, I don't think anything got damaged in that. Alrighty lads, so here's the deal. This was a really bad time. I bought this tractor trying to fulfill my lifetime goal of starting a farm. And as you heard, it ran great when I bought it, and then the first time we didn't even make it out to the field. We're driving out to the field, and all of a sudden I hear this metallic pinging sound coming from underneath the hood, and Super Steve, Mechanic Steve, came out and diagnosed it as probably a rod bearing that had failed in it. And so we take it home, we take the loader off, which is what you see in this video, and later as an update we took the oil pan off, And sure enough, what happened is there was an issue with the oil pickup screen, like the oil pickup screen and the tube it's attached to, rather, and they had come loose, so the oil pump was sucking air instead of oil, which meant obviously no oil was being pumped throughout the engine, and the result of that was that a bearing ran dry and then failed. So this cost me thousands of dollars to fix, many thousands of dollars in downtime, more than what I already had in the machine. And basically, from everything that we can see, this was done completely intentionally and dishonestly. None of the gauges or the lights or the electrical system on this tractor worked when I went to look at it. So this is the buyer beware lesson in all this. Things like that don't just happen accidentally, and if they do, then, you know, if the machine's like that when you look at it, then it's being sold by someone who you don't want to be buying equipment from. We'll just put it that way. So what happened with this is the pickup screen, or the pickup tube rather, had come loose, and the upstanding citizens who used to own this thing just immediately sold it to a local tractor jockey, sort of local, he's like 3 hours away. They sold it to a tractor jockey who in turn sold it to me. To this day, I do not believe, or I do not have any reason to believe, that the tractor jockey knew that there was any issue with it, because obviously, you know, he just got it from whoever the last people were, or perhaps they filtered it through an auction. So yeah, the last people basically just said, yeah, screw whoever buys this thing. We don't want to fix it. You know, just make it so the gauges don't work, and then send it out of here. And that's exactly what they did. You see stuff like this all the time. Talking to Mechanic Steve, unfortunately, it's not just farm equipment. He sees stories like that on bulldozers and excavators and things along those lines. People break something, and actually, you know, now that we know that, anyone could have just popped the not even the full loader off, just the part of it that goes underneath the oil pan. Could have popped one beam off, could have undone like 15 bolts on the oil pan or whatever it is, tightened that up, and put it all back together, and it would have been fine. But no, people have to do the dishonest thing and say, oh yeah, you know, everything's right with it, blah, 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 and send it down the road to the next person, which is me. So the buyer beware lesson in this is, if you're looking at used farm equipment, you cannot assume anything. There's too many dishonest people out there. So what you need to do is obviously check all the fluids and everything. And if there's not a working oil pressure gauge or a working temperature gauge or whatever, you really need to find a way to make sure that those systems are functional. I mean, you know, stop by the store, pony up $30, and bring your own gauge to the tractor dealership and screw it in, you know, the side of the block or whatever. Just whatever you have to do to make sure that things are working, and if they're not, don't buy the thing. I mistakenly assumed that people were generally trustworthy and, you know, wouldn't do something like that, and it cost me many thousands of dollars, and it basically cost me my first hay season. So yeah, that was a disaster. Buyer beware, lesson learned. Scammers are everywhere.